Could you take us back to the beginning? How did you discover your passion for storytelling and the arts?
So I was always a theater kid. That was very much from the beginning. I think the first memory I have of that was being obsessed with Grease growing up and knowing every song, and I would play the soundtrack and the movie at the same time. I don't know why. So I guess that's where it first started. And also, I grew up in Dallas, and I never felt like I fit in where I grew up. And film and fashion to me were how I escaped that and how I was inspired. And I remember we would go to this shop called Video Village, which was like a homegrown blockbuster, and I get to rent my DVDs for the weekend. And so for me, it was always super exciting. And even the smell of popcorn still like gets me going. Um, and then I remember as a child, story time was always my favorite time. And then I started doing musical theater when I was about 12. And then that was actually the goal. I wanted to be on Broadway. That was the
Hmm.
initial dream that kind of got sidetracked. I started modeling pretty young. But I think as a child, realizing just how it could take me to faraway lands and places, and I could learn so many things about people who had different perspectives and different experiences than I did. That's where it all started.
Yeah, great answer. When you look at your career as a whole, who or what's had the biggest influence, either personally or professionally?
I think professionally, when it comes to filmmaking, I'm a huge Spike Lee fan and Sofia Coppola, both of the Coppolas, Francis Ford Coppola and Sofia, and even Wes Anderson. They just create such beautiful aesthetics with their films and the tones, and it's just very specific. Even with Martin Scorsese, you know a Scorsese movie when you see
Yeah.
one. So that's been a huge influence. I think my mom as well, she's a female businesswoman, and watching her do it all has always been very, very inspiring. And then I think what drives me every day to do this is just kind of to prove that 12-year-old that we all have inside of us who feels like they're not good enough or they can't do it
Mm.
or that whatever that's what drives me, is to prove that little voice wrong. So
You got a new project out now. Can you tell us about Blue Moon and the inspiration behind the story?
yeah, so Blue Moon is a little love story that takes place in a single night. And the inspiration, it was interesting. One of my good friends is actually in the film. Her name is Olivia Barris. She plays Davis. And she recently started dating women and came out. And I've been so grateful to be a part of that journey with her and to witness all of that. And she'd always mentioned how she didn't feel represented in media and how that really had affected her discovering her own sexuality. And I had had an experience where I had kind of felt this love in a night that we show in Blue Moon that was kind of wild, and it just really existed in that one night. And I was sharing it with her, and we just started collaborating and thought how cool it would be if we could combine both worlds. And I would write the script, she could be in it, we would cast another queer actress, and that's kind of how it came to be. It was supposed to be like 3 minutes on my iPhone, and was really just going to be like them in a bedroom together the entire night, and what happens, the dynamics, and it was going to be called Little Spoon. And then that kind of went out the
Mm.
window as I started writing it, and it really expanded. And I had my own personal experience, which definitely related to the plot line of Blue Moon. And it just kind of grew, yeah.
Yeah, you wrote, directed, and produced the film. How challenging was it to wear all those different hats?
Um, it was wild. It's like I didn't have time to think about it. And I also self-financed the film. And so when you do that, and once you spend a certain amount of money, there's kind of no going back. And just failure was not an option. And a plan B was not an option. Well, I mean, I guess there were lots of plan Bs, but just failure was not an option. And so I just put out the fires as they came. But I guess because I had no clue what I was getting myself into, I just kind of rolled with the punches. I mean, I'm shocked I'm doing it to myself again. But I just rolled with the punches. And I think because I loved doing it so much, it didn't feel hard as much as it just felt tiring a little bit. But
Mm.
even when it was over and we were done shooting, like I got really sad. And I didn't expect that. I thought I would be relieved that now I can just rest and work on other things. But I was really sad actually that it was over. So it's challenging, but it's really fulfilling. So I imagine it's like parenting in a way. Like it feels like a child that's a pain in the ass and like breaks things, but you love them. So that's how it felt.
And you're an actor yourself. How did that help you approach the way that you collaborated with the team?
I think that being an actor, well, you start writing things a little bit differently, and I think you communicate a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And, it was important to me that the screen time was flattering, even in the editing room. Do you know what I mean? Like, we really tried to edit the project so that we had the best performances from both sides. It was lucky that there's only two characters, so that was easy to do. Um, But I think circling back to my mom who has her own business, I mean, it really learned from a young age how to treat the people that are on your team and making sure that they feel appreciated and heard and valued. And that was really important to me because it's long hours. It's not easy jobs, you know? For all intents and purposes, I was probably bossy because that was my job, you know, and with like kindness and love. But like, I think that it just came down to communicating with everybody with a certain level of respect and like understanding that we're all trying to do our jobs. And in order to get the best acting out of someone, you have to create a really safe space. And when giving notes, it's an interesting line that you walk because you don't want to be critical because then you're not going to get anything from anybody. They're just going to kind of close up.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting discovery for me, and I was lucky that we brought on my personal acting coach named Lena Jarvis, who's amazing, and she came on set the second day. Was very helpful when we shot the sex scene, which like I didn't know how that was gonna go. You know, I had never done anything like that before. Um, and she just did an incredible job making everybody feel at ease and being able to be the middleman so I could kind of tell her the direct and blunt note that I wanted and she could translate that into a way to get the performance we wanted. So I think the key is just to hire people that know more than you. And then you're good to
That,
go.
that actually might be the answer to this next question. But what would you
Yeah.
say is the biggest lesson you learned working on this project that you're going to apply to the next?
That like my meticulousness, as much as it can bother people and as many times as I went back and we changed things, and to not give up on that because that is really your talent and your art. And I'm so glad we didn't, and everybody's always so thankful when they watch the final product that we did the things I wanted, or we took out, you know, even if it was just like there was like a power reformer in the back of one of the shots that I had VFX out that everybody told me no one's going to notice. But then we did it and I was like, oh yeah, that was a great idea. So I think just like never settling on your artistic vision, never worrying that you're going to be a bother, because in the end, like everybody on the team wants the best product possible, and you know, is going to support that when it comes out. And then I think just hiring people that know more than you, and then pacing yourself as well. Pacing yourself. We did post production in 2 weeks, and it should have taken 2 months. But we did it so
Hmm.
quickly to meet a deadline, and like that was a nightmare. So I think there's that lesson too.
Yeah, you recently won an award for the short. Congratulations, by the way. What has that response meant to you?
Oh, it's been, I kind of equate it to like people who run marathons and then these little stations where they give out Gatorade and goldfish. That's how it feels, where it's like a nice pat on the back because I'm sprinting. And it's a nice just thumbs up that I'm in the right direction and that, you know, I'd never done any of this before. So the only person I had telling me that I could do it was just myself. And I think it's nice to just get recognition that you are not crazy and that you actually are onto something, and that this is, you know, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. And it's nice to just have a little bit of positive reinforcement because again, things go wrong and you don't get into a lot of festivals, right? And like
Yeah.
for every yes, there's like three no's. So it's a nice, just positive reinforcement, I think, for sure.
Yeah, great answer. What do you hope audiences take away after they see the short?
I hope they have a warm and fuzzy feeling. That's been my answer. I hope that they see that, you know, love is love regardless of gender or sexual preference. That's a big one. And just that vulnerability is really how you connect with other people. And it's such a beautiful and precious thing that I think that there can sometimes be a tendency to be fearful to really expose who you really are. And
Hmm.
granted, you can definitely overshare, but I think being vulnerable is being human, and that's a really, really beautiful thing.
Well said. And there's so many different facets to your talent. Does one come more naturally to you? Is one more challenging?
Well, I think there's some that I've had more rejection with that, so maybe I'm more insecure. Like I think I started modeling when I was 13 and did that for about 10 years, and that came really naturally. But there was a lot of rejection with that, and I think I was still really insecure when I was doing that. Um, and then acting, you know, has also come really naturally, but I've also had a lot of rejection with that too. And with directing and writing, there's been less of that. So maybe I just feel a little less fearful when it comes to that. And it's interesting, even writing and directing, and I'm going to be my next project.
Yeah.
I've released this anxiety and this kind of self conscious narrative that I had around acting. Um, but I think probably directing comes the easiest. Yeah, I just have such a clear idea. Like every film, I already see it in my head. And so I have such a very clear idea of what I want, and I can articulate that very well that I think for me that comes the easiest.
You've teased us already, but you're working on another project. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah. So I'm super excited about this one. It's kind of Blue Moon's like older sibling. Um, it's called 13 Stepping, and it follows an AA group in New York City and how their lives intersect and intersext with one another. And there's 13 characters. I want to pitch it as proof of concept for a series. So 13 episodes, each episode from the perspective of one of the different
Oh,
characters.
cool.
First episode is from the perspective of the character I'm playing, named Lily. And it's provocative, it's sexy, it's a little grungy, it's a bit dark. It really explores addiction and the human condition and how not all of us are good or bad. There's a lot of gray in the middle. And it also explores community and humor and a whole bunch of different topics. But I'm super excited. The tone is a lot different than Blue Moon. It's very kind of 90s and a lot of reds and dark blacks. We're shooting in this really cool old like high school gymnasium. And so all of the typeface is going to be like the collegiate lettering. Our press kit's going to be a yearbook, which will be super
Oh,
cool.
cool.
I think shooting in New York is really amazing for me because I lived there ages 14 to 18. So I kind of romanticized New York because nothing bad had happened to me yet in life. Like I never had a breakup. I just was like living as a teenager in New York. So it's very romantic to me. And then the script is like 80% based on who I was as a teenager. So it's been a really cathartic and healing process as well. But I'm super excited about it, and now acting in a project that I'm writing, directing, and producing, and like providing emotional support for is a little overwhelming. But I don't think I would have it any other way, and I think that it's a story that I could only tell. I had contemplated going back and forth, like should I just cast someone, and I think that if I did that, I would have regretted it. So here we are, I'm balls to the wall, doing everything.
Yeah, as you embark on this like exciting new chapter in your career as a writer and director, what do you hope to say as an artist?
Anything that's honest and relatable. Um, I think Blue Moon was a message about vulnerability and love. And ironically, 13 Stepping, as diametrically opposite as it is kind of the same, you know? That, like, I think that love is the universal language that we all speak, and it's so important. And without that, there really is nothing. So I guess that's the message.
Yeah, great answer. And then we just like to end all of our interviews with a pop culture lightning
Yeah, no.
round. Do you have a guilty pleasure TV show?
Yes, the Real Housewives of any city. All of them. Anything on Bravo. I've even dated people who have been on Bravo. I'm a huge Bravo fan.
What about a guilty pleasure movie?
Um, Anything with Kate Hudson, maybe How to Lose a Guy in 10
Mm.
Days.
Favorite book?
Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Favorite play or musical?
Maybe The Addams Family on Broadway. I'm
Uh,
obsessed. Or Spring Awakening. Yeah.
what about a band or artist that fans would be surprised to learn is on your playlist?
Oh, maybe the Jonas Brothers. That's
Hmm.
like my childhood. Yeah.
And then final question for you. What's your dream role?
Probably something in a film by Sofia Coppola.